let's see. I'm here to talk about theater, my art. My art is based on ephemerality. Well, a large part of the magic of what I do is that it's here in an instant and gone before you know it. My art also renders every physical object I produce useless and out of date shortly after I create it. I can spend weeks working on something that will see a scant few hours use and then be gotten rid of to be used never again by anybody I know. Most every other fine art is based on preservation. Not so with performance. So how can I take this seemingly inherently wasteful practice and make it something that is responsible to the very life that it should reflect? I mean, is there any sort of metric for measuring art that destroys the planet? What place would the art even occupy if you could? I mean, I want to practice this for a long time, but I don't want the world to suffer for it. I'm not that kind of artist. So, what we're left with is to come up with ways that we can make this art responsible. Ways to make the artist responsible. Ways to make me responsible as an engineer. Ways to make me responsible as a human. Because as you go forward, you've got to remember, always, you must be responsible. So, I'm not the first to think of, conserving time, energy, materials in the theater. These things cost something. They cost money. And traditionally, historically, theater has often played the poor little brother to the other fine arts. It has often, with regional theaters, traveling shows, be it vaudeville, be it Chitlin Circuit, be it passion plays, be it medicine shows. It's typically been a poorer art. Even the established playhouses, however, needed some way to make productions easier to build and more easily time managed. So we see stock elements emerge as a building standard. We see costume shops grow. We see props grow. These have kept theaters producing for centuries on shoestrings. But what we see in the modern era is we see a shift. Theater's no longer the only voice out there at a certain point. We see radio, TV, finally the internet comes. They're there to gobble up the public's need for information, for religion, for advertising. So theater becomes slightly more just an entertainment, a pure form of entertainment. But even there, it's got competition. It's got movies. So what we see is we see theater swell. It starts to swell as if in self-defense. It starts to get grander. It becomes more formalized in that if it moves only from house to house, from theater to theater, where it is allowed to grow even larger. So what we see is even regional theaters, we see even our own high schools reaching for the largeness that is Broadway. Well, just so happens I want to talk about one of those large Broadway productions, Into the Woods, one that we've staged here. Along about the time that we were starting our Into the Woods project, I was working with another company, Voices of the South, on a project called An Old Forest Fairy Tale. It is a quite magical romp of a show created by a dear friend of mine, Virginia Matthews. It chronicles the saving of the Overton Park forest from becoming the Interstate 40 corridor through the city. Actually, true story. Everything's true, including the songs. We were restaging it as part of an awareness campaign on the current threats to the forest. So conservation was really in the front of my mind when I was starting this project of Into the Woods. I knew what my job was. I wanted to build the forest and save the trees. So I started out with that as my mantra. Now, at the time, there was not a conservation arm in this theater any more than there was in any other theater, that we can think of. It's just, we usually are dealing with how quickly events happen in this theater. We are dealing mostly with economies of time and not of materials. That's just the reality. And a few years previous to this, there had been a situation where we had something that was coming the very next day, and we had to literally rip a set down in order to make way for the next day's events. I can't lie to you. That physically hurt me, watching that set come down that way. It hadn't been planned, but that's how it happened. And there was some other thing that happened, and I'm not sure, I think it was due to weather, that the time span between the tearing down of the set and hauling away, it took about a week and a half, so that there was a pile of broken and twisted boards, new lumber, waist high, in my shop for about a week and a half. And I really couldn't walk past it. I felt so guilty, and I felt I owed a debt, and I wanted very badly to build the forest and save the trees. So I set to work planning Into the Woods. Now, when you start planning a show, you have hundreds of ideas, and each new idea changes the ideas before it, and such that you keep moving and growing, and finally you come up with something that barely resembles what you originally had. I believe, let's see, when the director and I, Mr. Rapp, started talking about this show, we were trying to figure out how to make these woods that have to transform in front of the audience during a song. We looked at maybe creating them out of actual tree branches. We looked at maybe using painted scrims. I think this is even an idea to use both. Can't remember, sometimes the sketches get old. But we finally decided that what we were going to do is we were going to use an idea similar to the actual original Broadway production and create rolling carts that would serve as tree trunks so that we could move ourselves throughout the forest with ease. Just so happened we had some 12-foot tall rolling carts that would serve the bill perfectly. All we had to do was make them look like trees. So what I needed was I needed a material that was lightweight, structural, paintable. Cardboard fit the bill. Plus, it starts out a nice even tone medium brown. Kind of nice. Also, I could get it in 4x8 sheets, so I could work with it a similar way that I worked with plywood. See, I didn't have a good resource for getting rid of my plywood once it's all cut down. I didn't have a good resource of recycling, so I had to move to something that I knew. And cardboard, we had recycle bins all over campus. So that's what we moved to. Here's a little primer on how we did it. There was a cart. We added wires in a crisscross pattern up and down the length of the cart. Then we applied cardboard bacon strips to it. A cardboard bacon strip is exactly what it sounds like. You take 4x8 sheet cardboard, you cut wavy lines down it, and voila, you have cardboard bacon. Let's see, these are some of the pieces that have been painted and textured to look like trees. You can obviously cut branches out of the sides and get something that's a little more sculptural. This is what we ended up with. These are constructed the same way in the back, but they're not mobile. These in the front are the ones that are mobile. There's a little better picture. There's a clump of them right there. The lighting makes it a little difficult to see. That's kind of intentional because the whole point was it needed to be deep and shady. Now, this was all done by my first year production class. And when the show was over, we were left, and everything had been either put back into the prop storage or the costume storage, and all of the platforms had been put away, and everything had been recycled that could be recycled. We were left with 2 garbage sacks about this size, mostly full of tape. Didn't know how to recycle the tape. We also walked away with several awards, but one main award. The award for design, for set design. Now you see, that committee had no idea of what my mantra was. I did not let anyone know. This was a personal mantra of mine. All they knew was that what they saw. And what they saw, they thought served the script. I can ask nothing more of my design, and I certainly couldn't have asked anything more of my first year production class. They're the ones that saw it through, and we walked away with the top honor at the High School Musical Theater Awards. It was a very, very successful project. So, this is all very good, this idea of recycling, but reuse. Now that's really, really the key, I feel, in a really sustainable effort. Because when you can recycle something, that's great, but if you reuse it, you're saving several steps. You're saving that piece from having to recycle it or deal with how you get rid of it. You're also saving the purchase and use of other materials. So it's really, I feel, the better way to do it. So if we're talking about cardboard, which has been a medium of choice of mine for a long time, you're left with the cardboard box. Native to liquor store dumpsters and apartment complex driveways on the second week of the month, the humble cardboard box provides a wealth of potential. It has been my medium of choice for years. I was definitely the kid that was more interested in the box than the gift. I even tried to establish a traveling convoy of trucks at the 70s skate birthday party when I was a kid out of the gift boxes. I didn't even need to open them. We just skated down with our boxes, It's bare in the air. But simple box sports in my youth gave way to larger constructions. Once I got to art school, cardboard was both medium and drop cloth. When I worked in the architectural community, it fueled countless nights, all night, staying up building models. It's when I started working in the theater and doing job outs as basically a commissioned artist for the theater, making masks, making props, I turned to cardboard time and time again. It was plentiful, and it was easy to come by. I probably was. The humble cardboard box. So, I think it's kind of magical. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about some creations that I made when I first started here that were some masks. It's been long enough that many of y'all might not remember this. These were masks from the Jungle Book. Now, as an artist, we a lot of times give ourselves other little problems to solve, and in these, a lot of times what I tried to do was to make the masks out of as few pieces of cardboard as possible, to try and take one box and just score it and bend it around. There are baseball caps that are seated up in these that with chin straps. That's how they wore these predominantly. Some of them were just handheld, but the ones that they wore were fashioned over baseball caps. So I would try and make them out of a single box. These are the wolf family that raised Mowgli in Jungle Book. This would be the hyena brothers. Some of you may recognize those from other shows too. Here is a crow. He made a second appearance, or his brother made a second appearance as Vlad Vladikov, I think, in his next production, the last production of Seussical. Got a monkey, some big cats. I don't know who the character is. And then in Cinderella, I made the horse heads. These are the horse heads for the mice when they got changed. So as you can see, I've used it quite a bit. But what I would love to do today is to actually make a mask out of a piece of cardboard. I hadn't decided until last night what I was going to actually make for you, but I do believe that as I was driving home, I thought about something. It's kind of difficult to see here. Let's go back. But I think I'm going to try to make a little raccoon for you. I saw a cute little family crossing the street, so I thought it would be really sweet to review them. It's the Asian market where this one came from. It's not some produce. So let's open this guy up here, and I'm going to leave this one up in case I need to kind of look at it again as I'm cutting. So let's see. Once we get this open, if y'all forgive me, I may go ahead and cut on the floor because a lot of times it's just more stable that way. Okay. And so I'm not sure why I made the decision to use the single box, other than a lot of times those decisions are sometimes also due to the amount of materials you have at your disposal at a time. And this one, I do believe that this project I was running a little low on my materials, so let's see if I can make this box do what it's supposed to. Alright. And it takes a little bit of knowledge of this facial structure, but it's mostly just, most of the figures that I do are really sort of based on cartoons and not so much on an actual creature. Okay, now score you with that, and score this down. Alright, excuse me. So we start to see him taking shape now. Trying to tape only on the back so I can keep the color a little consistent. It's going to be a little hard to see him because I don't have color to work from right now. I didn't think that bringing the paint on stage would also work too well. So, there we go. Pull you apart. Looks like we may need to pull you this direction. Okay. My production class is usually not this quiet when I'm frantically sitting on the floor cutting cardboard. Alright, so let's see if I can you're going to have to use a little bit of imagination on some of it because, as I say, I don't have everything to mount it up with or paint it. So I'm having to kind of color the tape. Get us a little texture going on it too. Eyes going. Let's work on the mask. welcome again, sweetheart. Yes, I talk to my objects, it's okay. You can snicker, I know. I'm well aware. Miss Davis muttering up here on the stage. All right, let's do some whiskers. We'll just have to get the idea from one whisker. I think we're all Ted here, we can figure that out. So, this is a very quick and rough sketch I'm producing for you, but I think you'll be able to see him, or her actually, because I do believe it was a little Lonnie that I saw. Of course, coming from our storm drain this morning. So the mask probably would go down her nose. So, okay. So, basically, you can hit display mute. I'm about to put this down. So, stay together, boy. There we go. Can I see him? Yes. Okay. So basically, my story is pretty simple, and it's this. Be responsible about what you do. Be helpful, be kind, but most of all, be responsible. And even if the goal you would set for yourself is something as lofty as art, and I do believe that is very lofty, every once in a while, take a step back and look at it. See how you can improve it. See how you can improve yourself. Because the answer is probably as simple